I'm Randy Garcia, and I'm a school board trustee for the Escondido Union High School School District, and I'm also the Director of Pupil Services and the Director of Nicholas and Community Day School for the Escondido Union School District. So I work for the elementary, and then I'm a board member for the high school district in Escondido.
So you kind of get a little bit of both there.
Exactly, yeah. And my focus is from preschool through adult ed. That's what I'm trying to make a difference on.
Yeah. What are your personal, or tell me about your personal experiences with military dependent students?
Right. Up to this point, most of my personal experiences have been when a student or parent would come into my office when I'm an administrator, or they work with administrators at our school sites, and they let us know that someone's going to be being deployed, or they need some extra support with what's going on because of the deployment. And I also just know from just personal experience, just talking to kids, knowing that their parents are maybe working on the bases here in San Diego, since we have a variety of military installations. So it's been pretty much very at a probably surface level, not too deep and stuff, just know who the kids are, if they spoke to me, or if administrators bring it to my attention. And so
is there a difference between I guess, do you personally think there's a difference between the DoD-based schools versus the public schools off-base? I know that the one in Camp Pendleton is actually run by the state right now.
Right, yeah. In North County, San Diego, where Escondido is located, and we're close to Camp Pendleton, and then we're north of Marine Corps Air Station Miramar. We know that the couple of schools that are up on the base in Camp Pendleton, right, they're run a little bit differently than our regular public schools. What I've been noticing recently from my roles is that we are having more and more students affected by the multiple deployments. Also with their, as I mentioned before, parents living on bases, that we do see a difference in what we need to do now. I think we could really learn from what's happening on the base schools, on how they work with the different students and their families when they end up having a parent leave, or a parent is killed in action or wounded. We need to really look at that more. I'm noticing more and more of our students in our district. I think we're anticipating, because we're doing a survey, because we're one of the 8 districts as part of the DoD grant that we're working with, and we're going to probably have about 300, we think 250 to 300 students or families that will be considered military. And then it seems like we need to provide more services now, is from what I'm hearing from the different districts that I work with.
Yeah. And one of the things that people have said through the interviews is that in a military child's kind of life, there's so much change. And what do you think could be a good way to keep a constant in the schools, so that no matter what school they go to, there's a constant aspect?
Right. I think number one is making sure they're stable, that no matter what happens, if their parents are deployed or something happens to one, that they can stay in the school that they're at, their school of origin, because that's very similar to the homeless as well as the foster youth programs we have in our districts. And there's also, like right now, the California School Boards Association has been recommending districts to adopt a military family board policy, administrative regulation that follows that if a student needs to be stable for the family, keep them at their home school, or if they have to move, you could go ahead and waive what requirements or paperwork they need, so you can get them enrolled and stable and connected to services. Yeah. So I think it's really important to, number one, stabilize their education and their home life, but then also provide any additional services, like if it's before or after school daycare, if it's any counseling services, social work services, if a family needs any support beyond that, employment, if they move into a new area, or if that person leaves, then they're not going to be able to have as much income to keep their home. There's different agencies that can help. So I think really, stabilizing their schooling and home life, as I mentioned, and also making sure that we provide them with a variety of services, which we're really working on in both of our elementary and high school districts. That's why we're excited about this opportunity with USC School of Social Work and the Department of Defense, because it's really going to help our military families, and then all the other students that come in contact with them and that go to their schools and live in their neighborhoods.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good program and system kind of set up for it sounds like for any student, not just military as well, that they are focusing on that.
Right, because education now is really about providing the best education not only for specific students but also for the community they live in, to build that stability for everyone that gets along, everyone's getting education, and then also not just individual schools but also the school districts. I think it's really important that we continue to provide resources so school districts can offer a variety of services, not only specifically military families but the other groups I mentioned and even beyond that, so then everyone can provide services and collaborate as different agencies that provide resources.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
What are some of the advantages or challenges that you've encountered when working with military dependent?
So the advantages and challenges. I know that the challenges have been just, for us as a school district, is having enough time and resources to find out who actually these students are. Because we know if they come and tell us, on our emergency card now in our districts, we're putting out information for parents to inform us. We haven't always done that. And so just determining who these students are, where their parents are, what branch are they involved with, are they enlisted or civilian? Because we know there's a lot of contracting going on with the different engagements out there. And so what we're trying to do is just identify them. That's been a challenge. And then once we identify them, finding out what resources do they really need and how do we have enough personnel to make that happen. And then I think the advantages is just when you do get students, they have a little more different experience than maybe some of our students that live locally. They haven't traveled as much or been on different parts of the country. I think that's a good advantage where other kids can learn from their experiences. And then just the information that they can bring about us being still at war. And what we're hearing is we're going to be in these conflicts for another 10, 15 years possibly, and there's going to be a great need for more resources in our public school systems to help not only the students that parents are engaged in these conflicts, but also to help, as I was mentioned before, all the other students who are going to be their friends and neighbors, and so I think we really just need to provide as much as we can to help and stabilize everyone.
Well, it sounds like we're working our way through that. So,
right.
What do you consider the top priorities when working with military-dependent families and students?
The top priorities is to make sure they have a good education. Just like any student, you want to make sure they have a good education and that you can provide them with what they need, the appropriate curriculum, appropriate textbooks, and then also making sure you have the personnel on site, like social workers, counselors, available, so if a student needs that person to speak to, and then also having student groups and activities. I think making sure that military families have ways that they can have before and after school care or be involved in different clubs or sports programs. And really, though, from my experience, it has been that if you can make sure they stay in the area that they're comfortable with and the people that they know, and not worry about all the other regulations, make sure the main priority is to make sure that student can learn and feel comfortable and feel safe. I think that's the most important thing we need to do.
Yeah, because you really can't start to kind of learn until you feel comfortable, get out, clear your mind and start to really think.
Definitely.
How do you think the public education has responded to the needs of military-dependent students?
I think our response has been slow, because initially we didn't really think about it as much. Even here in San Diego, it wasn't something in the forefront. But now that the military bases with their educational liaisons have been reaching out to districts and bringing that to our attention, because we started having conversations with the different educational liaisons at both Marine Corps Air Station Miramar as well as Camp Pendleton. They came out and started meeting with directors like myself, superintendents, school board members, to let us know that there are more and more students that are moving into our area, and they were able to provide us information, but not names. So now what we're doing is we can know more or less rough numbers, but we don't know the names of our students. So that's something we as schools need to do, is really find out who these students actually are. Because if parents don't tell us, we don't know. And now we're going to be going out with surveys and finding out that information and working more in collaboration with the military to find out, who these students are, where their parents are located, what's going on with them. So then that way we can develop programs in our schools to support their needs, and then to support the other students' needs as well, and also the extended family. And in my case, being in 2 districts, we're working with the preschool to the 8th grade school district, And then we have another school district, which I'm a school board member on, for the 9 through adult ed. And so making sure districts that aren't unified, that you articulate, because you could have an elementary school student that their parent has been deployed, or a family member has, and then you could have a high school student, but you want to make sure they both have the resources. So as schools, we have to articulate more about how we're going to have our resources available for these students on-site and also off-site, and making sure we have all our different agencies that collaborate with our school district aware of these students as well. So there's going to be memorandums of understanding we're going to have to put in place, agreements to make sure confidentiality is upheld, and that we really provide what the student needs and also what their family needs. So we really still need to keep working with different school programs like the USC School of Social Work program, or other universities like San Diego State. We also have interns from San Diego State, and then also working with our state legislatures, Assemblymen, Congress, to find out where we can access funding, because I see the need being greater in the future. It's starting now. We're trying to be progressive about it and proactive, but based on what we're hearing, if we're going to be there for many more years, there are going to be more and more students affected by this, and we need to make sure we're ready to handle that in our schools. And the only way we can do that is if we are provided financial resources and personnel to make that happen.
Yeah, and I mean, it's definitely a growing need.
Yes.
Is there maybe not just one difference, but what is the main difference that you see in the younger kids compared to the older, like the high school aged military dependents?
What do I see?
Is there a difference between the way that you guys kind of encounter them or meet their needs?
Well, for elementary students, usually find out about their need because of the way they're behaving. They usually have a behavior problem, or they'll tell their teacher that my mom or dad are leaving and they're upset about it. And for older students, it seems most of the time they're more disengaged. They maybe don't want to hang out with their friends. They're not doing what they normally would do. They're maybe taking risks in their behavior. So it's easier to, I believe, to address some of the younger kids because you have more resources, but a lot of times for the older students it's harder because they may not be willing. They're a little more independent than your mother or father or your guardian tells you need to go somewhere. As an elementary student, it's a lot easier to get them in and have them open up than it is for high school students. So I do see that difference from the students that I come in contact with, or my colleagues come in contact with, that are military dependent students.
And last question, what do you, or what do you hope that other interns taking this workshop or yourself get out of this program today?
Well, for the interns that are working in our districts, I hope they gather this information and skills that they need to meet the students' needs when they are on our campuses, and when they learn to be a social worker, as they earn that certification, that they really understand what their purpose is, how they support the students, especially military families, and also how they support the siblings of that family and the family, if they return or not, and how we make sure that we support them as much as possible. For me personally, it's to help me gain a better understanding of what military families go through. My father was in the Air Force in 1951 to 55, but that's when he was 16 to 20-year-old young man. And we all came later once he met my mother and everything, so we weren't military, a family, because he was already out of the service, did those 4 years. So for me personally, is to understand when people are career service members and that they're going on multiple deployments, to provide me with the skills that I need and information to help our students in our schools, and then to also help make policy at district levels to make sure that we're meeting the needs of our military families, that we're providing the resources, and then also making sure that we're sensitive to what goes on, because every student is different and unique and each family has their own situation. And I want to make sure that whatever we do at our schools, that we really support them so they can be successful, so they can reach their goals, even if it's a happy ending, or if it's a tragic ending to what happens with their family member and their enlisted member. That I want to make sure that we have everything available for them so they can continue to be successful and contributing members to our society and community. So that's my main goal, is to learn as much as I can, and then work in collaboration with the school social workers and the different universities are providing them, so that way we can keep providing everything that we need to, and make our schools wonderful, happy, places that are achieving, but also providing all the necessary resources, especially mental health and any physical health that we need to do.